Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show twice a week where I talk about a random episode of Star Trek. Uh, it'll be on Wednesdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, let's talk about Wednesday. Unfortunately, there was user error there on my part where my microphone was not connected properly. And so I did a whole stream without, anybody able to hear me. So I'm going to do a do-over stream, and hopefully that works. I, you know, I mean, we'll see. Anyway, the episode that I want to talk about tonight for the second time is Star Trek Voyager, season 22, season 6, episode 22, Muse. Now, or on streaming side on Pluto TV and apparently Paramount Plus, it's called The Muse. Don't know why that is, but that's what it is. So this episode, I used to not really like it that much. And a little disclosure, real quick. So this episode was not chosen by random. It was chosen a few weeks ago because I wanted to revisit the episode because it was on in the background one day while I was on my day off. And I was kind of watching YouTube and had the episode on the background. And so I decided I was paying attention to the episode for a little bit and decided that I wanted to go back and rewatch it and see if my thoughts had changed about the episode. And they did. And I'll tell you why as we go through the episode. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't really like it, but I think I've changed my mind a little bit on the episode. Now, going forward, I have created a random episode generator because I didn't think of this until after I written the script, because I have pieces of paper here that I write down stuff because I'm old and I'm like Mike from Red Letter Media. And so, I'm just trying to go forward with just the random episode generator. And I didn't program it because I don't know how to do stuff like that. Again, I'm old. I'm not good at computers. I'm slightly retarded, like Gary from New York Neurotic. So what I did is I took a deck of cards and kind of split it up into episodes, seasons, and series. Now, when I talk about Star Trek, we're not talking about Kurtzman Trek. We're not, getting into that. I may at some point talk about that in the future, but not right now. Right now, we're talking about the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. That alone, if I were to go through every single episode, it would take me years to do so on a twice a week basis. So I'm not promising that I'm going to make it through every single episode, but I'm going to at least give it a try and see how if this interests anybody. So with the deck of cards, you have, so in Star Trek that I'm talking about, there's a total number, there's any given season, with the exception of Enterprise and the original series, there's 26 episodes. So I have 26 cards, and here are the cards. So, and then there are total of 7 seasons, with the exception of Enterprise and the Next Generation. So I have 7 cards that'll tell me which season it is. And then, of course, the series. So you have the series, and this one right now is on TNG. So at the end of this episode, I will shuffle each stack, and that'll tell me which episode to do next on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So let's get on with the review. I'm going to try to keep it briefer than it was the other day because I've been sitting on this for, like I said, 3 weeks, and I want to get it done and over with and talk about it, and then move on to the actual random episode because I think that's more exciting. So in this episode, Kelly Whitmer, who plays Ensign Cutler on Enterprise, who in Enterprise, I thought she was a good character. They kind of imply that her and Dr. Phlox are kind of flirty towards each other, and she was a good character, but unfortunately the actress died, and they didn't do much with her. They did more with her on Enterprise than they did in this episode. I can tell you that, and we'll get to that when we get there. But she has a ridiculous role, and she was a good actress, and she's cute. I thought that she was really good when on the episodes that she had on Enterprise, but unfortunately she wasn't there for very long. So, so this episode starts off as like it's on a planet. It's like a pre-warp civilization, and it's kind of like the ancient Greeks, and the episode starts off with a captain's log, but there's like a Greek chorus type thing that they start off, which I thought was interesting. Most of the time we see a captain's log, and it's the ship, out in space, and you just hear the captain's log, and that's about it. This is one of the few instances where it's sort of different. It's elsewhere, So the captain's log is like a Greek chorus, and there's 3 guys, and they're in front of a guy who's like a warlord, and it's basically implied in the show that if these guys make like a bad play that he doesn't like, you're done. It's kind of implied there. So he's watching this, and he's kind of intrigued, and so they tell the story about B'Elanna Torres, who is on the Delta Flyer, and something happens, and they crash land, and she orders Harry Kim's with her, and she orders Harry Kim to take an escape pod, and so she's crash landed on this planet up in the hills, and they liken it to more like a ship, like a sailing ship, because like I said, these are pre-warp. They don't even have industrial technology, the steam engine or whatever. They don't even have that. They have sailing ships. So they liken it to a sailing ship that has crashed ashore, but on this planet. And the warlord guy gets up, and he stands up, he claps, and he's like, I want another I want another one next week, and or something like that, like in a week. And he gives them a short timeline, and the guy complains about it, and the warlord guy gives him like a look, like you need to do this, or I'm gonna fucking kill you, kind of thing. And so he's like, okay, I'll do that. So this guy, who's the main playwright, his name is Kellis. He he goes to the shuttle where he has. Well, first, so after that, after he agrees, then we get to the music and the theme and all that. Then the following scene, that's the end of the teaser. So the following scene, he uh, goes to the shuttle where he has Torres tied up, and she's all like, "What the fuck, man? What are you doing here?" And he refers to her as an eternal, which is like their version of a god, not to be confused with the MCU Eternals, which are also sort of god-like, but that was a crappy movie. Uh, and so he wants Balana to tell her more about um, about Voyager and their adventures and stuff. And she's like, why should I help you? And I mean, you got me tied up here, and you know, I'm no, I'm not interested in your little play or anything like that. I, you got me tied up. Like what the fuck? So he's like, uh, well, there's a point where they're arguing with each other, and she is like, he sets her free, and he like is still trying to plead with her, and she's like, she brings, so they're, the whole point of this mission was to search for dilithium crystals. Now, how many times in Voyager, have people complained about how they have endless resources, even though they're stuck out in the Delta Quadrant and, stuff like that. And they have like endless shuttles, and the ship gets damaged, and then the next week it's repaired again, and they're like way the fuck out in the Delta Quadrant where there's Starfleet can't help them, or the Federation can't help them, and so I think it was kind of neat that they're actually looking for resources, although we're seasons in. They started off kind of trading with people, and Neelix, was supposed to be like this master trader guy who could get around and help them out. That kind of fell by the wayside. So anyway, she shows him a picture of dilithium crystals, and he's like, "Well, those crystals are located on my what does he call them? Like a patron, my patron's land. I'd be killed if I went there." And she's like, "Well, no crystals, no story, And and she's like, he's like, well, there's no way I can't do it, and she's like, well, what if I'm more powerful than him? Now, coincidentally, outside there's a rainstorm, and like lightning strikes, and he's kind of gets scared, and he's like, did you do that? And she doesn't say no, doesn't say yes, and kind of gives him a look like, yeah, I fucking did. And uh, and so he's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll go get the dilithium crystals. So so then she tells them about like Vulcans and stuff, and Tuvok, and stories on on Voyager. And so it goes back to the next day, and they are rehearsing the play. And the guy's like, there's one guy playing a Vulcan, and he's, he's talking to another crew member, and they don't understand how Vulcans, could have no emotion, which is not true. They have emotion, they just suppress it. We all know this. Robert Meyer Burnett has talked about this multiple times, which is why they keep fucking it up on Kurtzman Trek, and they keep making Spock, this because of that one scene in the cage where he says the women, or he's crying about that flower. Oh, there was a time when Spock was young and couldn't control his emotions, so let's do that every single fucking time until we get to the point of the original series. So they're rehearsing that, and the guy who's playing the Vulcan can't understand it, and so what's his name? Kellis? Yeah, Kellis like sits him down and kind of explains, kind of like I just did. Like, no, they have emotions, but they suppress their emotions, and they're very stoic, and they're very logical, and logic is their philosophy, and the guy kind of gets it, and he's like, okay, I see what you're saying, but he's still kind of like freaked out over it, and so then there's a point where I guess part of what I like about this is that, unlike Kurtzman Trek, a lot of times there's individual character growth from B'Elanna just in this one episode, which you don't get that in Kurtzman Trek. Like, you don't have a story where Tilly, for example, has her own. They tried to do that. They tried to do that in the fifth season. I think it was the fifth season. Might have been the fourth, where she's with a group of academy kids, and they like crash land on this snow planet, and they're all like freaking out, and she's trying to like be a mentor to them, and she's trying to teach them a lesson. But it's botched. It's ridiculous. It's just so stupid, and so I mean, like, that's why I'm trying to highlight this episode, because it's flawed. I'm not going to say it's not flawed, but it's definitely pretty decent in storytelling, and like, it's almost like the Odyssey in a way. So there's a point where Callis wants more help with the play because he can't come up with an ending. There's a point in the play where, you know, I forget which characters were like in love with the other. You know, like Chakotay's in love with the captain, and you know, there's like love triangles like you'd see in a soap opera and stuff. And and there's an old guy who's a member of the chorus who'd kind of been around for a long time, and he's talking about, you know, and I thought this was funny because it again reminded me of like Star Trek Discovery. He's talking about how, like, you know, there comes a point, and this episode is very meta in a lot of ways too. He's talking about how there comes a point when writers run out of ideas and they just start making everybody fall in love with each other, or, you know, people getting married. Everybody's getting married. They did that in Big Bang Theory. That a lot of people complain about that. I stopped watching after like the 6th or 7th season. But, you know, writers run out of ideas when that's how you know they're running out of ideas, when everybody's just falling in love with everybody else and everybody's getting married. Now, yes, Tom Paris and B'Elanna get married, but it was a natural thing that was over the course of the whole series. They didn't do that with other characters. They did try to make Chakotay and Seven a thing, which was stupid. But then of course in Picard season, you know, over the course of Picard, the 3 seasons of Picard, they had, you know, Seven's like suddenly a lesbian, which is like a thing in modern television now. Like suddenly you're gay, or say, oh well, people say, well, there's bisexual people. Yeah, well, they never ever showed Seven being interested in any partner other than a male. So how do you all, you know? Okay, well, she grew out of it and she grew up. Well, okay, whatever, dude. And so Taurus is like, that's so stupid, right? Like, you can't be in the middle of a fight with species 8472 or the Borg or something like that, and then all of a sudden they like having conversations and like, oh, you know, what are we gonna do when we get home tonight, and are we gonna watch a holo program or whatever? She doesn't say that in the episode. I'm just coming up with ideas myself. But you would see that in Discovery all the time. They're in the middle of a shootout, and then it's like it's one thing to be in the middle of a shootout, and you see this in like Lethal Weapon or Terminator, or I don't know, you name it. You see it in Star Trek all the time. Where they're in a shootout and maybe like some one-liners are thrown about or whatever. But to be in the middle of a shootout or some kind of action scene, and you just freaking something stupid, some kind of stupid conversation is going on about your feelings and stuff like that. I mean, come on, man. You know, so to be in the middle of a shootout or some kind of action scene, and you. So anyway, I apologize for whatever just happened right now. I wanted to make sure that I was in fact, you could in fact hear me. So going forward, I won't be doing that. I'm just gonna trust that everything is working fine. Yeah. So again, this reminds me of classic Trek and why you know, even Voyager, which my God, there's some horrible episodes. You know, they don't do some of the stupid shit that you see in Discovery and Strange New Worlds, by the way. And I don't have as much of a problem with Strange New Worlds. I thought there was a couple of good episodes. Among the Lotus Eaters was one that I thought was handled pretty well. It was Robert Meyer Burnett didn't like it, but I liked it because it was kind of like the Odyssey, you know, bits and pieces, and the Odyssey is one of my favorite stories of all time, and it's one of the best, you know. And I'm looking forward to Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. I am. I hope he does it well. I think Christopher Nolan is the type of person, you know, he likes to play with time a lot. And you see that in Inception, Memento, pretty much every movie except for, like, you know, the Batman movies. And the Odyssey is like, between the Iliad and the Odyssey, it's supposed to be like a 20-year journey or something like that. But at least you know, and they're lost at sea. They go on the the island where the giant is, and the Lotus Eaters. They run into the Circes. And oh brother, we're out the really did that story a good service, you know. Uh, I'm interested to see what he does. So anyway, she's Kellis asked about the Borg, and I think I mentioned that earlier. And and oh, there's another scene where this guy, one of the old guys from the chorus, comes running in. And he's like, "Oh, our patron, I don't remember his name, the warlord guy, was insulted by a neighboring guy." And they didn't have, obviously there wasn't Twitter back then. But it's funny that this is coming up now. It would be like Elon Musk and Trump, you know, like insulting each other on Twitter or whatever. And so that's enough for him to go to war, you know, this guy. And so they want to create a play that would inspire him to not go to war, to be more peaceful, to come to some sort of agreement where they're not, they don't have to like get along, but they don't want to, tear up each other's lands, and they don't want to destroy crops, and they don't, stuff like that. And Torres, B'Elanna is like, that's how is that even possible? She questions it, and Kellis tells a story about like 100 years prior, the amphitheater that they're in used to be something else. I forget what he said. It was like a gladiator type situation where they would fight each other that way, and then suddenly a playwright came up with a play and introduced it, and it like caused a peace among the different tribes or warlords or whatever. And ever since, they've been doing these plays to kind of as like a memorial to that. So at this point, and this is where I get to the character growth. At this point, B'Elanna is interested in the play, and she's like, okay, that's interesting. And she goes back to the shuttle, and she's like, trying to do repairs to the shuttle. Now, oh, and I forgot to mention, this is where Kelly Whitmore Meyer comes in. While she's one of the actors in the play, and she's kind of like Kellis's girlfriend, but they don't really. It's kind of like that. It's not. It's kind of more implied. And again, a lot of this episode is show not tell. So they trust the audience to kind of pick up all this stuff, and so again, like I said, it's very meta in many ways. But she was there while Kellis is talking to Torres and all this, and she gets pissed off and runs away. Then it's like later on that night, B'Elanna's trying to fix the shuttle and the flyer, and she's this girlfriend, Kelly Whitmire, shows up, and she's like, "I know you're not an eternal, basically you're an alien, or whatever. And I'm gonna tell, what's his name, the patron. I'm gonna the warlord guy. I'm gonna tell him that you're not an eternal. You're gonna if you show up to the play tomorrow." And then basically threatening her, and she's like, "What the fuck," So then, and runs off crying and stuff, like I said. And so at this point, Harry Kim shows up. And now, what I forgot to mention is like, there is a part, they are on Voyager in parts of the episode where they're looking for Torres and they're trying to figure out, her trajectory, her, I don't know, trajectory, God. Where would the shuttle have landed or crashed or whatever? They haven't received a message that she sent out, which part of what we saw in the captain's log in the teaser. And there's a couple of jokes which are they're kind of silly, where Tuvok is. They make a joke where Tuvok has been up for several days, hasn't slept, and Neelix confronts him in the mess hall and is like, "Hey, you haven't slept in a while, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Well, I don't, I'll sleep when I find her, Because at this point, we're, like I said, it's the 6th season. They've had a relationship for a while now, or like a friendship for a while now. And then there's another scene later on where they're on the bridge and Paris is there, and a couple other people that aren't part of the crew. I mean, that aren't part of the main cast are there. And Tuvok is Janeway's in her quarters or in her ready room or something, and Tuvok is in the captain's chair. So they're looking around. Oh, Harry, no, not Harry. Somebody else is there, and they all of a sudden hear snoring, and it's Tuvok, and Tuvok's sleeping. So Tom Paris kind of like wakes him up, and then he kind of looks around, and that's the joke. It's kind of stupid, but whatever. You gotta have a little bit of humor in these type of episodes. So it's right around the time that the girlfriend runs off, Harry shows up, and she gives him a big hug, and she's like, "Harry, where you been? Oh my God, you know." And he's like, "Well, I was, you know, I crash landed like 200 kilometers away or something. I don't know how far that is, but I'm assuming it it they've been gone for like a week now. So he has rations. He had something or other, and oh, guess what he conveniently has the transmitter. Yeah. But I mean, they're not going to be stuck there long. Uh, and so, then they go back to the ship, and they that's where they get the message. Okay, well, okay, we're like 2 days away or whatever. Another thing Harry mentions is that he was hiking at night to get there. And I didn't think about that until just now. In the episode, when I was watching the episode, I was thinking, well, he doesn't want to get captured by like these warlords or whatever. But then I was like, oh, what if that was because not only the warlords, but also the Prime Directive. And we'll get to the Prime Directive when we get to the end of the episode. So, Kellis is having trouble trying to find an ending. And so then in the play, it's Kelly Whitmire plays like the Borg Queen, who is Seven in the play. Obviously, Seven's not the Borg Queen, but in the play she is. And then Janeway, and she's on the ship with them. And Janeway is played by another, person. And they have this little bit of dialogue back and forth where it's like in the play, Kelly Whitmire is like, little does she know, she talks to the audience, little does she know that I'm secretly the Borg Queen, but nobody say anything. And does this like little gesture, and then walks away. Then the Janeway character comes up and says, "Oh, I know that Kelly Whitmire that Seven is the Borg Queen, and you don't say anything either," or something like that. And I thought that was pretty kind of cool. It's like, hey, this is kind of a play I might want to see. And they have those little masks, those like half masks and stuff from like the Greek tragedies and stuff. So again, very meta. So then, so as we see that, Torres is talking to Harry. She says, "Harry, you just gave me an idea," and he's like, "What about what? About ending the play?" She's like, "What?" He's like, "Why do you even care about this play?" And he's like, "Well, so she tells him to wait for her signal before they beam up to Voyager. So she runs off, and she goes to the play, and it's right at the end, and she steps out, and she's got that little half mask, and they're all wearing like white robes and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, I'm the real B'Elanna Torres," and kind of like dun dun dun, because presumably somebody else was playing Torres, the play version of Torres, and that's when Kelly Whitmire like runs off, and the warlord guy kind of stands up, and he's like kind of like pissed off, and she's like, she's not an eternal, she's blah blah blah. I don't remember what she said specifically, but and then she gets kind of like hauled away by security. The guy's security guards, it's like, don't tase me, bro. So then the guy gets pissed off, and all of a sudden the three guys, the chorus guys, the old man who I spoke of earlier, kind of improvises and says some kind of something, to kind of ease his, to calm him down, and then Torres hits her comm badge or whatever and beams away. Now, the Prime Directive. So, after I watched this episode, I watched two different reviews. One was a positive one, and one was a negative one. The negative one said, hey, she clearly violated the Prime Directive. And I was like, well, yeah, she interfered with their society and made herself be known. Well, the Kellis had found her anyway, but she could have not interfered, with the play. But Star Trek always plays fast and loose with the Prime Directive. If it were up to me, I would be pretty strict, but not as strict as Picard. Picard was willing to let, in Pen Pals, he was willing to let a primitive race be destroyed, just because Data had contacted that girl. And I'm like, if they can do something, you're not interfering with a society. If there's like a comet about to hit Earth, and there's aliens out there that can stop it, that's, technically, yeah, you're violating the Prime Directive, but you're allowing a whole species or a whole sentient beings to just be destroyed. Now maybe we could survive. We survive. There's been times when humans have been down to the thousands. There's been times like that, but I would say more like violating the Prime Directive is more like Omega Glory, or like that guy, that admiral in the not Space Nazi episode of TOS, where he's now their Fuhrer, and I'm like, he took it upon himself to change their whole entire society. And what she did was basically prevent a war, which is a violation of the Prime Directive, but one that, if, let's say, she has to send a report to Janeway, and I'm Janeway, I'm going to be like, slap on the wrist, and if Janeway reports it to Starfleet, by the time they can do any fucking thing about it, well, it's too late anyway. Who cares? And the other thing is, I would liken it to like a UFO sighting. Oh, I saw an alien and they fucking disappeared and went into the clouds. Oh, you did? Okay, really? Okay. So that's the way I look at it. Is, yes, it's a clear Prime Directive violation, but it was, I think it was worth it. Uh, should I? So I'm more of the Kirk approach. Like, yes, you should be as strict as you possibly can, but sometimes, shit happens, and who you gonna call? Um, and the other review that I watched was more positive, and it was they brought up the idea of, you know, again, I keep saying that this is a meta episode, and it is because it's using allegory in order to tell a positive message, which has positive results. It stops a war, you know, and that has been the point of art. A lot of times since the beginning of time, and especially in Star Trek. So the guy had a good point, and I thought, and like Shakespeare, I mean, that's a great point, and so that's a good reason to give this episode a chance. Like I said, it's not without flaws. Another reason why I like this episode was, when I was younger, back in the '90s when this aired, I didn't care about Greek mythology that much. I didn't care about Shakespeare. Everything I ever learned from Shakespeare was from watching Star Trek. Yeah, we watched in I think it was in ninth grade or eighth grade, or maybe I don't remember. We watched that '70s Romeo and Juliet because we had to read it too, or read part of it or whatever, or sections of it in school. The one where you get to see her boobs. Uh, for me back then, that's the only reason to watch Shakespeare. I get to see some boobs. But now, after growing up and learning more about that type of stuff, I find it more interesting. And, oh brother, where art thou? That really turned me on to like the Odyssey and those type of stories, and so that's why I decided to give this another chance. Uh, so the other thing I like about it that I said last time when nobody could hear me was it was Balana episode where she's not all fucking pissed off. Like almost every Balana centered episode is where she's pissed off. She's pissed off because there's one episode where she's pissed off because she finds out she's pregnant, or I think Icheb discovers it. He calls it there's a parasite, and I believe there's a parasite. No, and then Seven is like, no, she's pregnant. But that's kind of funny to think of a kid it's a parasite. But so she gets pissed off and takes it out on Tom because she changes the doctor, reprograms him, and Tom is like, "What the fuck are you pissed off about?" And she's like, "Well, my dad, my dad left us, because she's like half human, half Klingon. And I used to get made fun of as a kid and picked on, and even in the 24th century, people were still doing that, even though we've evolved as humans, and so she's pissed off in that episode. She's pissed off in other episodes with, like, she gets in a fight with 7, you know, it's like she's always got this chip on her shoulder. But this episode, she's invested in the play. At first, she's pissed off. She's like, "No, I don't want anything to do with this. You've got me tied up. You treat me like a prisoner." But then over the course of the episode, she, gradually becomes invested in it and ultimately, stops the war. So I like the actors in this. It's believable that they're kind of like a traveling troupe. Um, Again, Kelly Whitmire, great actress, was completely wasted. Like they wasted her talent to just make her like a jealous girlfriend. It was so stupid. The stuff on Voyager is brief. We don't spend a lot of time on Voyager. It's so as far as like the rating and whatnot, it's a middle of the road type episode. I have written down 6.5 out of 10. I'd say that still sticks. I don't know what I would have rated it in the past, but that's where we're at. There's a lot of familiar faces, a lot of character actors. Sorry about that. That we've seen before. Some that have been in Star Trek, various Star Trek episodes. I had to look it up, and I didn't write down who they are. I don't. Whatever. I already talked about the two contrasting reviews. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much all there is that I wanted to say about that. I think it's an interesting episode. So now we get to the portion of the show where I choose a random episode, and I'm gonna look it up once I choose it. So let's take these rubber bands off. So here we have the seasons. So I'm gonna kind of shuffle them and try not to look at them. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, and then I'm gonna flip it over. What do we have? Season 2. Okay. Now we have the episodes. So there's the episodes. This one I can actually like shuffle pretty good because it's a decent size stack. The smaller stacks are nearly impossible. So when I did it Wednesday, I ended up with another season 6 Voyager episode. I want to try to get away from that. And if I do get like a repeat, I'll just reshuffle them. If it's TOS or Enterprise, I'll have to reshuffle those, until take that season out. If it's like goes beyond season 3 or 4. All right. I'm gonna split the deck. And maybe split it again. Shit. And then I'm gonna start all over because I just saw what that was. I need a bigger table. I have one, but my TV's on it. Alright. We'll split the deck again. And let's flip it over. Okay, we are on 24, episode 24. I had to write over this one. So episode 24, season 2. Which series is it going to be? I'm kind of hoping it is next generation or the original series, because there is a second season, which has a lot of good episodes. All right, what do we got? We have Voyager. Oh my God! I swear to God, I did not do that on purpose. All right, so there you have it. Oh, what episode is that? Bear with me for a second. Oh God. Oh God. Did you get to it before I did? If anybody's out there, it's Tuvix. God. Okay. So Tuvix it is. That's the problem with these random things. You're not guaranteed a good episode, but we'll do it. I've seen it multiple times, and it's not good. So anyway, I want to thank Anti-Derivative Jill out there, because she allowed me to promote my channel the other day on her channel. I want to thank Script Doctor for making me one of his moderators, and also I sent him a super chat promoting my channel. I'm glad he didn't get all pissed off about that. Doomcock the same. I sent him a super chat promoting my channel. Hopefully he didn't get pissed off. I didn't get to hear that super chat because I had to go to bed. I want to give a shout out to Price of Reason, one of my favorite guys out there. Check him out if you haven't already. And a shout out to Admiral Teague, another great. He's a good Star Trek reviewer. He does Enterprise. He's doing Enterprise right now. I don't know what he's gonna do next. Probably TOS. I guess he's going through all of them. I don't know. And I used to watch his Enterprise reviews, but then my schedule changed and I can't get to them anymore, unfortunately. So those are my shout outs. That's my thanks. I want to thank anybody that's watching right now, whether you're lurking or not. And hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. I'm the Dead Man, and this has been the Red Hour. Thank you. Good night.